Hey everyone, this is Will. I'm super excited in this video to show you how you can control your PTZ Optics camera with Ableton Live. Now, when I saw PTZ Optics announce this brand new MIDI control feature, I was super excited. The first two things that popped in my mind as possibilities were one, I could literally be in a rehearsal, have Ableton Live open, and I could adjust my PTZ Optics camera without having the remote, without having to go to Web UI. I have access to everything within Ableton Live. This opens up really a lot of possibilities and saves me tons of time. But the really powerful thing is when I started to imagine this integrated with a band on stage using Ableton Live, at least with a click track, maybe even running tracks and using their PTZ Optics camera, because you could literally telegraph your entire song, map out your entire song arrangement and say at the verse, I want the camera to do this. At the chorus, I want the camera to do this. And you could recall presets, or you can literally have full control over your camera from Ableton Live directly in the DAW. Again, no additional apps, no additional places you need to go to make that happen. Just have Ableton Live open and it's going to happen. So today I'm going to show you how exactly to do this. We'll walk through from zero to completion on how to make this happen. So this will be a little longer video and you could skip around as needed. I'll let you know if I'm going into a section that you may already have the details. But let's start at the beginning here and talk about what we need. First thing we need in order to make this happen is Ableton Live. Now, I'm using Ableton Live 11.1 running on a Mac, but it's important to note this works on Mac or PC. You don't have to just have a Mac to make this happen. And you could use really any version of Ableton Live. So I'm using Live 11.1. You could use Live 9, 10, 11, 11.1, whatever's available to you at the time of watching this video. And then also, you can use any edition of Ableton Live. So intro, standard, suite, they all send MIDI commands and all of these will work equally. Now, the next thing I have is my PTZ Optics camera. Hello, there we are, a super zoom shot. We're gonna talk about how these are connected and talking to each other in just a moment. But I've got my PTZ Optics camera. Most importantly on my camera is I've installed the latest firmware. So you wanna make sure that you go to ptzoptics.com to check out what the latest firmware is and installed on your camera. It's super easy. I use the upgrade utility available from PTZ Optics to do that. And it took maybe 3 minutes. And they have great instructions to walk you through how to do that, which is great. Now, next thing we need to talk about is how to connect all of these. This is where the power really starts to happen. So let's talk about my Mac Mini. So I've got a Mac Mini running Ableton Live 11.1, and I have an Ethernet cable going out of my Mac Mini into a network switch. Okay, so out of my Mac Mini, I'm connected to a network switch. Now, the next thing I have is my PTZ Optics camera. Out of the back of my PTZ Optics camera, there's an Ethernet connection on that. I've got a Ethernet cable that's going into a network switch as well. Now, I want to stress here, I'm saying network switch. I'm not saying internet, okay? In order for this to work, you don't have to have internet. And that's really the power of this. Because if you're like me and you're weary of enabling internet in a live performance scenario, don't worry, you don't have to. Both of these devices just need to be on the same network. So again, Mac Mini connected to Ethernet to a network switch, PTZ Optics camera connected to network switch via Ethernet as well too. Because both of these are on the same network, and because they'll work as long as they're on the same network, this opens up tons and tons of possibilities. So imagine for a second, you're on stage, you want to set up your PTZ Optics camera at the back of the venue and you're traveling. And sometimes the back of the venue is 200 feet. Sometimes the back of the venue is 1,200 feet. You can take an Ethernet cable and run from your camera into a network switch, take your computer, plug it into a network switch, and as long as they're on the same network, they're going to be able to communicate. So they don't need to be close to each other. If you're in an install situation, like a houses of worship scenario, again, no matter where this is in the room, in a completely different room, as long as it's on the same network, they're going to be able to communicate. So let's walk through the steps that we need to go through to make this happen. And the first thing I'm going to do is talk about actually accessing the camera. Now, in order to do this, you're going to have to use either a Chrome or web browser because of a MIDI API, MIDI utility that's only available in those. So for the sake of today's video, I'm going to be using the Chrome browser on my Mac. But again, Chrome or Edge will work. So I'm going to go over to Chrome. I'm going to access my camera's IP address. And it's important I do this using an HTTPS connection, a secure connection. So I'm going to start typing HTTPS. Okay, we'll do this. And then I'm going to type my camera's IP address in. Now, first thing I do when I go here, you're going to get this message. Your connection's not private. This is completely okay. No one's trying to hack my computer, but I'm trying to access through a secure connection, which is why I'm getting this screen popping up. Now, if you happen to know what an SSL certificate is, if this screen bothers you and you want to bypass this, you can actually install an SSL certificate on your PTZ Optics camera. You can find information on how to do that at ptzoptics.com. And again, if that's important to you, then you're going to understand likely how to do that. But for me, here's the step I'm going to take. So I'm going to go down to advanced, and this is likely a little different if you're on an Edge browser, but this is what the experience looks like on a Chrome browser on a Mac. So I'm going to click advanced. It's going to warn me and say, blah, 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 blah. I'm fine because I know exactly what I'm accessing. I'm going to hit proceed to, and that's going to take me to the screen. So next I'm going to enter my password here for my camera. And this is going to take us to the web UI for the PTZ Optics camera. So there I am again. Hello. And this is where we're going to be able to communicate with our camera. So if I go to MIDI control here, this is where we're going to see a lot of the this is where we're going to hang out, honestly, most of the time as we make our settings and adjustments here. But before we set this screen up, let's talk about how these are going to communicate. So obviously we've mentioned my Mac Mini, my PTZ Optics camera are both on the same network, both connected to a network switch. How are they going to communicate? What we're going to do is get MIDI out of Ableton Live, send it to our Chrome browser, which is then going to send that across the network to our PTZ Optics camera. How are we going to get MIDI from Ableton to Chrome? You've probably never done that. Well, it's super easy. We're going to use something called a virtual MIDI bus. If you're on a Windows PC, a Windows machine, you're likely going to use something called Loop BE1. Virtual MIDI is another utility I found. I've used Loop BE1 before. In fact, I've included a link to a short video I did showing how to set up Loop BE1 if you're on a Windows PC. If you're on a Mac, we're going to use a virtual MIDI bus that's installed for free on your computer called the IAC driver, stands for Inter-Application Connectivity Driver, which just basically means we're going to have a virtual MIDI cable that's going to go from Ableton Live to Chrome, and then we're going to send from Chrome on the network to our PTZ Optics camera. When you think big picture, what is a virtual MIDI bus? It's essentially just a virtual cable, so don't be stressed or scared by that. So now, I'm going to show you on a Mac how to set up the IAC driver. I'm going to do this pretty quickly. If you're on a Windows PC, again, check out the tutorial for Loop BE1, or you can check out Virtual MIDI is the other utility I found. Pause the video, go set that up, and then come back here in just a second. Again, if you've already set up the IAC driver on your Mac, you could skip this section and come back here in a second. But let me show you how I'm going to set this up. So over on my Mac, I'm going to use Spotlight, which is Command, comma, and I'm going to search for Audio MIDI Setup. Okay, so I find it. There's my top result, and we're going to hit Enter. So now, the first screen I see here is my audio devices screen. I want you to go up to the window, the menu option here. Let's do Show MIDI Studio. Okay, so now let's double click on the IAC driver. I'm going to click Device is Online, which is just going to enable this device so the IAC driver works. Next, you'll see under ports, I already have a bus set up. If you don't have a bus or a port available to you, click this plus icon here, and that's going to add one. If you add one, then there'll be a change. You have to click apply. But in my case, I've got the device online and I have one bus available to me, which is all I really need to do here. So now we've enabled the IAC driver. Let's start by looking at the web UI over in Chrome and how to tell Chrome to accept MIDI through the IAC driver. Let's close Audio MIDI Setup. We don't have to leave this open, thankfully. And over in the MIDI control window, if I look under MIDI controller, you'll see I only have one option set up here. There's a device called IP MIDI. I'm not going to be using that in this case. And if you enable your IAC driver or your Windows virtual MIDI bus option without refreshing the page, you may not see the option. So if you're in the scenario that I'm in, just hit refresh. It's going to refresh the page. And then the first option that will pop up here in the dropdown, you'll see it now show up IAC driver bus 1. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to hit set MIDI controller. Okay. So by doing that, I'm essentially telling Chrome, hey, I want you to listen on the IAC driver bus 1, port 1 for MIDI that's going to be coming from Ableton Live, okay? And we're going to set up our routings in Ableton Live as well too. Now, before we do that, I'm going to go here because I keep forgetting to do this as I'm testing this, and I want to enable MIDI commands, okay? So that means that I'm going to be able to send MIDI from Ableton Live to Chrome to my PTZ Optics camera. So now we've got this set up. Let's go into Ableton Live. And again, I'm using Ableton Live 11.1. You can use whatever you want to. I'm going to go to Preferences, which is Command, comma. If you're on a PC, it's Control, comma. We want to go to the Link Tempo MIDI tab here. And let's head over to the output sign. We're looking for our virtual MIDI bus. In this case, mine is the IEC driver. I just want to make sure that track is enabled. And essentially what that means is we'll be able to send MIDI from Ableton Live's tracks to the IEC driver, which is then going to go to Chrome, which is then going to go to our PTZ Optics camera. Okay, so we'll close this window. Just a quick note, we'll walk through this a little more in depth here in a second, but in order to send MIDI from a MIDI track to the IEC driver, we want to go to MIDI 2 here. If for some reason we don't see this, then we're going to go over to the right. We're going to enable our IO, this little show hide button here that shows our in and out section. We want to go to MIDI 2, and we want to enable IEC driver bus 1. If you're over in arrangement view, which we will be in just a second, I press tab to get over here. You'll see the same exact thing here. You just want to make sure you enable the IEC driver in that dropdown. What this allows us to do is it allows us to send MIDI commands from Ableton Live to directly control our PTZ Optics camera. And we can do this again without having to have really any other utilities open, without having to have any apps open. I want to look at just the default MIDI values, the way this kind of works by default. Then we'll talk about customizing this for your setup. If you tend to be someone who wants to customize everything, I'll show you how to do that. And then I want to show you in just a second how to save some time when you're doing this. So we're back over in Chrome. We're in the MIDI control section here. The first thing I want to encourage you to do after setting this up, obviously, is I want you to click down at the bottom of the screen here where it says display command mapping. Okay. What that's going to do is that's going to show you the default mapping, just kind of the factory default when you load this web UI, when you have your PTZ Optics camera open up. And essentially what this means is these are the default MIDI values that if you send these MIDI values from Ableton Live, they're going to automatically control your PTZ Optics camera. You don't have to do anything to access those, okay? And this is super, super powerful. So let's just look really quickly and talk about as an example how we could do this, okay? So let's say we want to call preset 1 or preset 2. In fact, I think right now when I look at my camera, looks like my camera, I believe this is preset 2. So we're going to actually call preset 1 to pull this up, okay? So let's go back over to our web UI. If I want to call preset 1, which basically means recall preset 1, what I need to do is send a MIDI note that's sending MIDI note 1, okay? So let's go to Ableton Live and let's try this out. So I've got a MIDI track here. I've already mapped, set my MIDI 2 to go to the IEC driver bus 1. Let's create a MIDI clip. So over in session view, I'm going to double click. And then again, the value we're looking for is a MIDI note on message with a MIDI value of 1. So just knowing Ableton Live, I know I can scroll down here in our piano roll. This is note 0, right? So I want to go up to note 1, which is C# -2. So I'm going to double click to create this. This is just personal preference for me. I'm going to click to drag to make this, this note run the entire measure here. So now let me show you this view here that I have set up. So you can see Ableton Live, plus you can see the PTZ Optics camera. You can see the view we currently have. So let's recall preset 1. So I'm going to click this clip, which is going to trigger this MIDI note, which is going to send note on message for MIDI note 1, which is going to then move our camera to preset 1. Okay, so you can see it zoom out. It's a subtle move. I understand. I know it's a subtle move, but it's going to adjust our camera and change to a preset. Let's look at this list. Again, these are defaults, but let's say you're someone who just really likes to customize. You really like to make things special, or maybe you have a complex setup where you see these notes and go, well, this note's going to interfere with that. I want this to actually be a different note. I want to change this for my setup. I want to make this note on my MIDI keyboard or this note in Ableton Live when I send it, do multiple things. Whatever your reasoning is, let's really quickly talk about how to customize these mappings. And then I want to wrap up this video showing you how I would personally use this in Ableton Live and how I'm going to save you lots and lots of time. So again, make sure you stick around. We're almost there. So let's say we want to customize these default values. Let's scroll up a little bit. What I want to encourage you to do is enable display MIDI commands in the browser. And this is going to populate this screen here and show you what the MIDI commands are that you just sent and used. So what I can do is, and we'll talk about this, I'll show you this in just a moment. We can go to this drop down here, and this is going to show you every single preset available on our PTZ Optics camera that we can, or a better way to say that, every control on our PTZ Optics camera that we can automate via MIDI. So I can call presets, I can set presets. Let's go to call preset 2. And if I look down here, the default for this is a MIDI note and button 4, okay? But I wanna change this. I don't know why I wanna change this, but I wanna change this. And I want this to be, let's say MIDI note 128. So I could scroll up, I could select 128, and I could do map PTZ Optics commands to MIDI. And you can see I mapped call preset 2 to MIDI button 128. Then I would go into Ableton Live, create MIDI note 128, send that, and it would control that specific value. But in this scenario, I don't necessarily know what MIDI note 128 is in Ableton Live. So PTZ Optics has made this really, really useful for you. So let's go back. Let's actually go back into Ableton Live for a moment. I'm just going to pick a note here. Feel kind of like a magician here. Pick a note, any note. Let's go up here. So C8, okay? I don't know what note this is. I don't know the value of this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave display MIDI commands in the browser enabled. And I want to just watch this screen. So I'm going to press play here. And it's going to tell me the last MIDI event here was note on. And the last MIDI command pressed was 120. Last MIDI command value, which would be velocity, is 102. So I know that my note here is 120. So now that I've figured that out, let's go to this drop down for call preset 2. I'm going to select 120, and then I'm going to map this. Okay, so what I've done now is I've mapped MIDI note value 120 to control preset 2. So now let's go back. I believe we're on preset 1, if I remember correctly now. Yeah, it looks like we are. So let's go back to this view so that you can see this happen in real time. Let's trigger this note, which is note 120, and we're going to see it change our camera here to be preset 2. Okay, so we're going to trigger this. You'll see it zoom back in. Okay, as promised, I said I want to make this a lot easier for you. So if you look at this and you look at this list, that's a lot of MIDI commands that you would have to map in Ableton Live, figure out how do you create them as clips, exactly how do you do this? Again, like I mentioned, I want to make your life a lot easier. So in order to do that, I'm going to open a file here to show you. I have created what I call my PTZ Optics control cues. This is a completely free file that anyone can download. And if you head to fromstudiotostage.com/PTZ, you can download these free cues. And these free cues are mapped to our default mappings. So if you go in and you want to change mappings, you're more than welcome to change them. You have to update this cues file. But if you want to leave your mappings exactly the same way they are in that browser that I showed, then you can use this cues file to really quickly automate your camera. So let me show you how this works. Then I'm going to show you how I would apply this, whether you're using this cues file or just creating this from scratch in Ableton Live. So the first thing I did is I opened my cues file up. I want to make sure my MIDI mapping or my MIDI routing is correct. In this case, MIDI to IAC driver. So all of that is set up. So again, let me show you how quick and easy it is to use this. Let's say, and I talked about the first example here, I want to be able to just shift my camera. So I'm looking at this. I actually want to, this is preset 1, I believe. I actually want to zoom this out a little bit and move the camera over. So I'm going to go here to my cues, and I'll leave this where you can see both of these. I want to click zoom out. And you can see as long as I hold down that clip, it's going to zoom out. As soon as I let go, it's going to stop. So let's zoom out even further. Okay, great. And let's pan. I think I want to pan a little to the right. Let's pan a little more to the left. Let's do something a little like that. Okay. Now, I need to adjust my zoom a little, I think. There we go. Try to get that just dialed in exactly like I want it. Okay, great. So that works for me. So I actually automated and moved my camera directly from Ableton Live to get this just the way I wanted to. And you can see with these commands, this is what I really like about the way this is set up, is as I click, it's going to move. When I let go, stop clicking, it's going to stop. So that's going to function just like our remote controller. Now, let's save a preset. So I've got this set up. I want to save, let's say preset 3, because we've got 1, 2, and now 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press spacebar to stop. I'm going to go over here to the right to stop all my clips just to be safe, to make sure nothing else is running. And I'm going to click set preset 3, which is going to save preset 3. So we'll press spacebar to stop that. Then I'm going to go over here again, press stop all clips to stop that. So now we should have 3 presets saved on our camera. So let's go to preset 1. We'll click this. There's preset 1. Let's go to preset 2, which is a little more zoom, dramatic effect. Preset 3 is going to zoom us back out. Okay. So those are my 3 presets that I have saved on this. Let's talk about how to use these in an actual context with an Ableton Live song. So let me pull up an Ableton Live song here. Okay, great. So this is a song that actually has stems to it, has a click track. I'm going to click the arrow to the left of this show hide button over here in the left-hand corner of the screen. This is going to show what's called Live's browser. What I've already done before we started is I clicked add folder and I added this PTZ Optics control cues file to Live's browser. It's really easy to do. Click add folder, find that file in your computer, choose it. So I got to choose there and I hit open to add that to the browser. So now I'm going to click the arrow to the left of this. Let's just start really simple. We want to do call preset. So we'll click the arrow to the left to call preset here. And let's say we want, I don't want you listening forever, having to listen forever. So let's do call preset here. And let's do preset 1 at the beginning. Then we'll do preset 2 at our intro. And we'll do preset 3 halfway through our intro. We'll go back to preset 1. Okay, so now next thing I'm going to do in order for this to work is I'm going to make sure the IEC driver is selected. Okay, and then let's just solo this so I can just hear my click. So I'm going to solo our click in our MIDI cue files, so that keeps sending. And let's play this back. And again, let's make sure you can see the camera as we follow along. So we'll press 1, or we'll press play rather. We're playing in our timeline. This is running along, so that's preset 1. Here comes, looks like preset 2. Yeah, there we go, a little tighter, more dramatic shot. We'll zoom out to go to preset 3. And there we go. Great. And then here in a second, we will call preset 1. So we'll go back to the beginning right now. There you go. So hopefully, and this is a very small, simple demonstration, but hopefully you can really start to see the possibilities of that. We can call and select specific presets on our camera directly from Ableton Live tied to our stems, our backing tracks. What's really cool about this, I didn't even show you this, we're on preset 1 right now. If I click back to my intro and press play, then we're going to jump back in our song, and that's going to jump back to select preset 2, which is really cool. Again, as a reminder, to get access to this free cues file that's available for Live 11.1, head to FromStudioToStage.com/PTZ. And then to get more information about this new feature, to download the updated firmware, and to see more about PTZ Optics products, head to PTZOptics.com. Again, thanks so much to Paul and the rest of the team at PTZ Optics Cameras for incredible gear for live performers and musicians that allow us to reach brand new audiences, serve our current audiences, and do it in a way that allows us to stay focused on the music. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial. We'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.